abusuafoɔ yɛ ma mo nyinaa kɔ aba anwummere yi ɔnwontofoɔ ne se mehyerɛ awurade na nyinaa na yɛyie wɔ m'anim daa yi awurade mu na me kra bɛhoahoa ne ho ahobrɛasefoɔ bɛte na wɔn ani agye anwummere yi abusua mo ne me nkamfo awurade kɛseyɛ na moma yɛmmom nkamfo ɛma ne din so Onyame ye na n'adɔyɛ ɛwɔ hɔ daa. Amen.
Amen.
With these words, mema yɛn nyinaa yɛn ho akɔ aba anwummere ɛba final event. Dwumadie yɛnka meeting afi dwumadie a yɛdie. Onyame adom nti anwummere nso wɔde aba abɛhyia. Anwummere sɛnea dwumadie no bɛsi akɔ no megye di yie sɛ ɛbɛyɛ nhyira ama yɛn nyinaa. Ansana yɛbɛfrɛ wɔn a wɔn ba bɛto dwom ne wɔn a wɔbɛbɔ mpaeɛ ama yɛn no mehyɛ mo nhyɛ saa announcement wei nso ɛma yɛn sɛ wowɔ adanseɛ biara wobɛpɛ sɛ wobɛdi a yɛbɛyɛ encourage wo sɛ adaroma ma wasɔre panyin asɔ ɛnte wɔn nso de bɛma ɔsɔfoɔ kusi yɛboa ne ɔpanyin boaben na ɛbɛboa ma mpanyinfoɔ nsa aka na afei hyehyɛ bi a ɛwɔ sɛ yɛyɛfa ho ne bere a wobɛtumi adi wadanseɛ no na yɛ ma ɛno nso etuma ba mu saa nti yɛbɛhyɛ mo sɛ monhyɛ ɛno nso ɛma yɛn anwummere nyame adom mu Ebenezer Gallant Choir ɛbɛma yɛn nnwom wɔnom ewia a yɛ maame Christiana Amankwa a ofiri Charlotte ebedi yɛn anim ɛwɔ mpaeɛ mu ɛno nti gidi ye sɛ anwummere onyame ɛba abɛhyia yɛn bebree nti moma yɛn nyinaa yɛnya ahoboa saa na yɛ mfolo dwumadie no sɛnea mpanyinfoɔ ahyehyɛ no ma mo nyinaa makɔ aba ebio anwummere ɛba dwumadie so Ebenezer
so mi mona yemmi me vai free so mi mona yemmi me vai for the war so mi mona yemmi me vai free so mi mona yemmi me vai for the war so mi mona yemmi me vai free so mi mona yemmi me vai for the war so mi mona yemmi me vai free so mi mona yemmi me vai for the war it's a now when it comes to us so you mona yemmi me vai free so you mona yemmi me vai for the war Sora no baby me vai for the yemmi Sora no baby me vai for the war Sora no baby me vai for the yemmi Sora no baby me vai for the war Sora no baby me vai for the yemmi Sora no baby me vai for the war Sora no baby me vai for the yemmi Sora no baby me vai for the war Down you know myself, only out of you. So me mona yemmi me vai for the war If you say, oh no, Eliba Eyamano, so me bona jende, me gonna for the war. So me bona jende, me gonna free. So me bona jende, me gonna for the war. So me bona jende, me gonna free. So me bona jende, me gonna for the war.
Agidifo momye mompaye ade nyina sutumfo enyame ne abanke sie osuru hene nyame wo adom ne ehomobro ahye wo ma enwumere asedanka wudin da ayi nka wudin na ntuntun nka wudin eda wase yi waye kanfo wudin ye tuntuno e ma wo so kira mansan esan se woni ahene mu hene ene ewura mu awurade woni ye giniye eda wase eda wase nhihye pa wonam Nagsda mpanyifo so ama yetumi abehia enwumere nso enuonyam ka wudin sa mmiri nso yesre se wobehu ye mmobo na wodi ye bone ne ye mrato nyina ache yen edudwumadi ehye won sa soronko kwan so domfo nyame yesre se wobehwie hu nkonkron hira no soronko ne tumi mu edi agudwumadi yi so yesre se wobeka nwumtofo ho ma wonyum dede a emunsem ebeka okra bi ama wasachira sa nso ne yesre se asofo ne elders ahuru a onwo vaccine onwo edi dwumadi ahuru nyina ehwehwira so na ma bibiara enkoye enhyewde na nuonyam the communication for shawonsa efidi ahuru onwo yusu nyina amira hwehwira so na bibia nkoso ye asomdwe mu afenso okasafo obedi yanim anwumre de ne shawonsa so nkokwan so obehwie hu nkonkon hira no agu no so na kasafa ni mu e de kire yen yesese ebubu yan so yakoma dindin nyinara na ma yen asomre na kasa na yentie mu akoma pam ni adwene pam na nsiesie yen so ema o ma ye toso mienu anwumre o haw ni dadwene bia so e de aba wani yesese huyemobo na tie yen na ye ma ye mresem na yen so abedi adase ahye wudi na nuonyam eda wasi wa kanfo wudi so watie yen na obeye sa ma yen esansi ebisa we nyina waje nkwapa Kristo din mu enye nhyira ene ayeyi ma wo awurade wudin da amen
amen Emame yeda wasi bebre mame Kristi nyame enhyira wo enwumre abusiafo enwumre ye ba behwe no o say post pandemic church reopening sani adwumadi ni sitie no nyame adom ye na Dr. Kuni ba ko a wobeboa ye Dr. David Prakwatin na nyumre oba bedi anim na waba be eboa ye ewo sa adesua yi mu menka bibi kakra emfa Dr. Prakwatin ho Mr. Menka no brofo na I very succinct. Dr. Pipra is currently a fourth-year medical student at the Yale School of Medicine and was selected as a National Institute of Health Medical Scholar for 2020-2021, the leading public research institute in the US. Prior to Yale, David completed his undergraduate degree in Harvard University and a master's in biotechnology at the Columbia University. Currently, he's applying to residency and will be awarded his medical doctorate in May 2022. Unyame Esha Dr. Pam Gidi yes adwumadi ati sei no nipa a otesa no a obedi animu no ebeboa yen ama yehunu senya enyama no ebesi akro ansa na doctor ebeba no yebe ekan ye scripture no yebe frɛ Elder Joseph Donko no kan scripture no ama ye opanyin wie pe a na ye theme song no enso atoa so ne amobɛtie no doctor and opening Wadarama.
I get it for and then you may. I can cast someone, Dr. Powell say, young fanny, you may dear any mono. You be what me busam a trade do bacon, Njichemu a do nine. Me busam a trade do bacon, Njichemu a do nine. Near Watron Honey. Dear a quanture any no, or mine fiasse. Na o man wo ye ewo aginatu for dodo emu. Pese me kenkan no brofo. The scripture is taken from Proverbs 11:14. Proverbs 11:14. Where no counsel is, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors there is safety. Eradinshra na semiso no ma yantiase e wona dumunti. Amen.
Amen.
Tiada soye sing handa yen shre me sing ye Emma wonu Christo Oya bravo moon Ya ye be kopiara Jemba ye braka sempa Say yesu ebenyo Egrino ayetyo Agilino ayetyo Yentu eni jijunda Yen sepe yen ho. Hallelujah, amen. And worship him no rema. Hallelujah, amen. Oh, him no rema. Oh, him no amen.
Good evening, everyone. My name is David Pipra. I'm actually the son of Dr. Pipra, and I will be talking about the reopening of the church in the post-vaccine pandemic. I saw the program said the post-pandemic, but we know this pandemic is not over. There's a lot that has been happening in the last week that has made people reconsider whether we are going to finish this pandemic in the near future. So there's a lot we'll be talking about. I will give myself 40 minutes to present. I don't want to go over the time. And so I will set my clock right now and we'll go over many topics. So the first topic we'll talk about is the SDA General Conference position on vaccination. What has the church really said about vaccination? And then we'll talk about the vaccine efficacy. How effective is it against these new variants? How durable is it? When will I need to get my next vaccine shot? And what are the side effects now that we have had the vaccine for about 7 months now? We'll also talk about the Delta variant. Many of you have heard about this new variant that's circulating that's more infectious and it's even causing breakthrough infections and might need booster doses. And so we'll talk about that. A lot of new things we'll discuss. We'll also talk about the church safety precautions. How do we reopen the church in 2021 and 2022? We'll talk about the legal issues. Is it legal to ask somebody if they're vaccinated? Is it legal to turn them away? Are vaccine mandates on their way? And then we'll talk about the future of the pandemic, both here and globally, and also at home in Ghana. And so before I begin, I really want to just give you guys the takeaway message. I want to give you the answers to all your questions. The first is vaccines reduce transmission. Despite what you hear, vaccines reduce transmission. If you're vaccinated, you are less infectious and less likely to pass it on to somebody else. Vaccines are also near 100% effective at preventing death. Let me say that again. Vaccines are near 100% effective at preventing death. And we'll also discuss the need to wear a mask indoors, even if you're vaccinated. So a lot to discuss. The church will be closed until further notice due to the COVID-19 coronavirus. God help us all. This was posted on churches around the world. And so many churches have been closed since 2020. This is a new predicament that many of us are not aware of. And many of us have not experienced before. And so I want to talk about this and what is going to happen to reopen the church. Our greatest priority is to fully reopen the church safely. And so I just want to give us some historical perspective. Sarah, could you turn off the light? The lighting was actually set by the department. Thank you. So the historical perspective of the vaccine and actually the pandemic is that in 1918, the United States experienced a widespread pandemic. It was called the Spanish flu pandemic, and it killed almost 100 million people worldwide. Churches, schools, and shows were all closed. And at the time, the United States was fighting a world war which killed tens of millions of people. Yet here we are in 2021. Churches did reopen, and many forgot this actually happened. And now we have a new virus on our hands. In 2020, 1 in 500 Black people have died of COVID-19. COVID-19 was the third leading cause of death in the United States in 2020. Complications from COVID-19 include stroke, heart failure, kidney injury, and even more. Deaths in the United States reach up to over 600,000 people, and in Canada, 27,000 people have died because of COVID-19. Many of us know somebody who has died or has been affected by COVID-19. 1 in 3 symptomatic cases have developed into long COVID, that disease in which you feel fatigue, you feel COVID brain, in which you can't think, where you have a lot of symptoms that linger on. And so COVID-19 is a challenge. Let no one deceive you because of that. And so many of you guys watch CNN, and CNN this week, actually CNN back in May said, the CDC said, vaccinated people don't need a mask inside or outside. The CDC said vaccinated people don't need a mask inside or outside. That was their word in May, but we know things have changed. And so in the United States, we saw many people discarding masks. We saw indoor spaces open up. We saw a reopening society, and again, we saw a flourishing of society. It felt like things were going back to normal, and a lot has changed. But before we get into that, I want to talk about what the church says, because I wanted to dispel all myths about what the COVID-19 vaccine means when you take it. And so the General Conference of the SDA Church put out a statement on December 18th, 2020. This is right when the vaccine was being distributed to the first line. They said, as we witness the global magnitude of the pandemic, the deaths, disability, and long-term COVID-19 effects that are emerging in all age groups, we are encouraging our members to consider responsible immunization and the promotion and facilitation of the development of what is commonly termed herd immunity, pre-existing community immunity of approximately 80% of individuals as a result of previous infection and or vaccination. They went on to say, the global upheaval caused by COVID-19 pandemic has generated considerable speculations related to end-time events and misinterpretations of the Bible. One recent view propagated through social media and some internet websites has put forward the theory that the upcoming vaccines produced to combat COVID-19 belong to a process of control that will lead to the application of the mark of the beast. It should be noted, however, that Adventists hold to the conviction that the end-time controversy will center on the law of God, and particularly on the fourth commandment, Revelation 14, verse 12. Moreover, the third angel's message will warn against the reception of the mark and will enlighten humankind as the issues involved. For this reason, it should be made clear that Seventh-day Adventists understand the mark of the beast to not be a literal mark, but a sign of allegiance that identifies the bearer as loyal to the power represented by the beast. So what are they saying? They are saying the vaccine is not the mark of the beast. As Adventists, we have no ethical reason, no moral reason to abstain from getting vaccinated. You cannot say, as Adventists, I believe that if I get the vaccine, it is the mark of the beast. Bible scholars at the General Conference have stated their position. And if you want, you can Google this. The document is there, and the church firmly stands behind this. And this was published in December 18th, 2020. So let's review some of the vaccines. We have Pfizer and Moderna, which comprise the mRNA vaccines. These are new technologies, which are really not so new, but these are new types of vaccines that deploy the technology of RNA, which is in our body. We eat RNA all the time. You need RNA to make protein. Protein is what is comprised in your body. Protein is the muscle. Protein is what makes your body happen. Without RNA, you have no protein. So when people say, I don't know what RNA is, you are taking RNA all the time. Your body makes RNA. RNA is a natural substance. And then we also have the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. That's a viral vector. What does that mean? Basically, they use a special capsule of a virus that is dead and cannot infect you. Don't let anybody deceive you that it can infect you. That gets into your cells and delivers the DNA that is needed to actually make the RNA to make the protein. So it's a little bit one step before, and that allows it to make the material that elicits an immune reaction in your body, and allows your body to create antibodies and T cells. A lot of people think about the antibodies, but they forget about the T cells that actually allow your body to fight the virus. So your body makes antibodies to neutralize the virus, and it uses T cells, that's cell-mediated immunity. So the cells in your body, when you think about T cells, you think about AIDS. AIDS is when your T cells get infected and die. And so your T cells are important for your immune system. So the COVID-19 vaccine stimulates both antibodies and T cells to fight the virus. That is what the vaccine is doing. And we also have memory in our body. And so because you have the T cells and you also have the antibodies, you have memory. And so what does that mean? So your body remembers what the coronavirus now looks like. And whenever it encounters it again, the body will multiply these cells and build up a lot of antibodies to quickly neutralize and kill the virus in your body. The immune system is great. God created an amazing body, and we have learned ways to manipulate the body to fight a new virus. And that virus is COVID-19. And then we also have the AstraZeneca, which actually is the same viral vector technology that is also used. And I'm bringing up AstraZeneca because it's actually approved in Canada, and it was actually delivered to Ghana back in March. I'll talk about that at the end of our lecture if we have time. And so a lot of people have mentioned Johnson & Johnson and it causing some kind of side effect. A lot of people don't know what the name of the side effect is, and they just know that Johnson & Johnson is a bad vaccine, or Johnson & Johnson is not as good as the mRNA vaccine. I want to dispel that myth, and I want to talk about that a little bit, because the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is actually critical to Ghana's vaccine response, and it's still being used in the United States. I'll say that again. It's still being used in the United States, and it's likely to be deployed in Ghana. So I think it's important for people to know what that is. So women between the ages of 18 and 59 years old were reportedly experiencing side effects from the vaccine. Now, let me tell you how many women, because I'm going to use numbers in this presentation. Don't shy away from the numbers. Numbers seem like they're just too big or too many numbers. The numbers are just to give you an idea of how small or how big the problem is. About 7 per million women were experiencing blood clots with low platelets. In medical terms, we call this thrombosis with thrombocytopenia for the doctors and the medical providers in the audience. And so 7 per million women experience blood clots with low platelets. Now, a lot of people do not know that women, about 5 per million women actually develop blood clots with low platelets without the vaccine. That just happens as a background rate is what we call. And so the Johnson & Johnson vaccine bumps that up a little bit. And so what does that mean? So when you have that, you tend to develop severe headaches, blurred vision, chest pain, and swelling. Those are the symptoms. But basically what has happened is you're starting to have blood clots in different parts of your body, and they can be potentially lethal. And so many people are afraid of this. The FDA monitors the drugs they put out. They monitor the vaccine, and people reported it to FDA. And many people say they don't trust the FDA, but the FDA monitors the drug after it approves it. And the FDA found that this was happening in about 7 per million women, and they said, we're gonna pause it. And that happened in March. This made headlines. A lot of people saw this. The FDA wants to see if the vaccine is actually causing that. They wanted to investigate the case, and it decided that the risk do not outweigh the benefits. The benefits of vaccinating, that means preventing COVID-19, far exceeds the risk. One theme you'll get from my presentation is that we have to make choices in life that are not always perfect. Sometimes we have to weigh the greater good against the potential evil or the side effects. And the greater good far exceeds it. 7 per million is virtually 0. If I said divide 7 per million, you wouldn't know how to do that because it's such a small number. It's basically 0. If I were to vaccinate everybody in Nagsda with this vaccine, I would expect no woman to develop this. And so that's how you can think about it in your mind. But the CDC said, because in America we have an abundance of mRNA vaccines, you can decide to take the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine. And I think the Canadian Regulatory Agency also did the same thing. And so why is it important to vaccinate? If you have these rare side effects, it's a new technology, you don't really need it. COVID, a lot of people you know probably beat it without the vaccine. Why is it important? Well, I think this chart actually illustrates it beautifully. It's very important to understand. So COVID, the biggest risk factor is age. How old are you determines how your mortality will be if you get infected What is mortality? Mortality is simply death. If you are 80 years old, you have a 1% chance of dying. That doesn't seem like a lot, but 1% chance is a lot in medicine. Most things don't reach 1% lethality, especially a virus, especially a sickness. And so it's very deadly in older people. So if you're 80, you have a 1% chance of dying. But if you get vaccinated, if you look at this, you'll follow along with my cursor, you'll see that your risk drops down to about the risk as a 50-year-old. So if you get vaccinated and you're 80, you basically have the immune defenses of a 50-year-old against COVID-19. And even look at it over here. The risk also drops down even further below. So what is 0.1%? That is 1 in 1,000. So if you are 50 years old, you have a little bit risk of less than 1 in 1,000 of dying from COVID-19. But if you vaccinate, you drop your risk way down 10-folds, actually 100-folds, and it gets almost as close to 1 in 100,000 of the 100,000. So what does that mean? You drop your risk nearly to 0 if you get vaccine. That's what the vaccines are for. The vaccines are to prevent death. That's why the vaccines are so powerful. And that's why all the doctors, that's why a lot of the medical providers have taken it, because essentially it makes COVID a harmless disease. You may get a cold, you may get diarrhea, you may feel tired post-vaccination, but you will not die. And the point of this presentation is to convince everybody that if you get vaccinated, there is no reason why you should die from COVID-19. I'll say that again. If you get vaccinated, there is no reason you should die from COVID-19. If everybody in Nagsda was to get vaccinated, we would have no deaths from COVID-19. And that's important. And so look at this chart and look at your own risk and ask yourself, am I appropriately assessing my risk for death from COVID-19? So the next thing we'll talk about is the Delta variant. There's been a lot in the news. It's actually getting a lot of press coverage. And remember, in the beginning of the week, the CNN had some breaking headlines, and many other news organizations said the CDC releases alarming study detailing the Delta variant's aggressive threats, warns the war has changed. So this week, the tone and the tenor of the pandemic has changed. It felt like in America, it was coming to end, things were opening, everything is about to be finished. We are going to live life back to normalcy. But then a lot has changed this week, and we'll discuss that. So what is the Delta variant? You might hear that in the news. People don't understand. The Delta variant is basically a more evolved, mutated form of COVID-19. It's COVID that's optimized. It's more infectious. What does that mean? It's easier to spread. On the right, we have what we call the R number. It's basically a basic number in biology that we use to describe how infectious a virus is. The original virus could infect 2 people. So if you got sick, you would infect 2 people, 2 to 6, 2.5 people. And then the Alpha variant that came out of the UK that was identified, that could infect 5 people. And so it's got a little bit more infectious. Now the Delta variant is thought to infect anywhere from 5 to 8 people, incredibly more infectious. For the viral load, it's about 1,000 times more viruses, so the virus can multiply even more aggressively. However, it's not more deadly. And so remember in the spring, when you were seeing India was getting hit by the coronavirus in February, March, and April, that was actually being driven by the Delta variant. The Delta variant was driving that massive wave where you got up to almost 400,000 cases, 500,000 cases a day. Those were the identified cases. There was probably even more that were not identified. And so the Delta strain is so good at multiplying, it outcompetes the other strains. What does that mean? It basically becomes the most common virus, right? It multiplies just so much faster than the original strain, and the Alpha strain, it becomes the dominant strain. And now it's the most dominant strain globally. And now we're seeing the increase in cases because the Delta variant is basically getting to more people faster. So one person can infect 8 people. Before it was 2. So 8 people get infected. And each of those 8 people can affect another 8 people, and so on. And so you have an incredibly aggressive virus. It's getting better. It's been in humans for almost 2 years now. It's getting smarter. It's learning how to infect more people, but it's not more deadly. That's important to keep in the back of your mind. And so how does the Delta variant compare with other variants? the Delta variant spreads faster. And so here are some other viruses that you might have heard of. Ebola. Ebola is the most deadly virus in the world. And so Ebola, if you get Ebola and you look at over here on the left hand of the screen, Ebola has a case fatality rate of about 50%. What does that mean? If 2 people get Ebola, 1 dies, 50% death rate. That means if you get it, you die. Remember those doctors in Sierra Leone and in West Africa? They were called heroes because once they contracted it, there was no cure. They got Ebola and quickly died. A very aggressive virus, but it's not that infectious. It comes through skin-to-skin contact. The Delta variant is different. The Delta variant is less deadly, but is now more infectious. And so what is another virus you can think of? Chickenpox. Chickenpox spreads very rapidly. We have vaccinated against it. It's not as deadly, but the Delta variant is very, very, very infectious. And so now you see the Delta variant, as time moves on, is becoming one of the most infectious viruses that's out there. And if you look at the original coronavirus, it was not as much as infectious as about polio, a little bit more infectious than the common cold, but now the Delta variant is moving towards chickenpox. Who knows how further it can mutate to become even more infectious. And so the Delta variant is incredibly infectious. And let me say this, if the Delta variant became more deadly, you would see a lot more lockdowns. You would see a lot more measures to stop the spread, because the thing about coronavirus is it's in that sweet spot where it's not lethal to a lot of people, but it's just lethal enough to be a problem. And so that's important to think about. And so this is the wave that is caused by the Delta variant. And so on the left is the number of cases per million, and on the bottom is the time. This is the date. And so if you look on the left side of the screen, this is the original wave. Remember those lockdowns in March? They said we're locking down. This is the original wave. Very small, not that many cases, right? And then last summer, we had some spikes in the south of the United States, and we had some spikes in the summer, not too much, and they went back down in the fall. Then in the winter, we have a massive surge. And historically, we know from the Spanish flu pandemic that I discussed in the beginning, the third wave is the worst wave of a pandemic. And in that wave, the United States hit almost up to 300,000 cases a day. It was incredibly deadly. And that's when a lot of people were dying. In January, deaths reached up to about 4,000 people per day in the United States. And it was a wave around the world because the cold weather drives people indoors. Indoors drives more infections. And then we saw the spring come and cases went down. The vaccine was introduced in December, and more people had immunity, and we saw a smaller wave. And then people started to discard their masks in May because it felt like the pandemic was over. And honestly, in my opinion, that was a reasonable decision because it was looking like the pandemic was likely to transition into a different phase. And then the Delta variant came. And so the Delta variant was hit in India in the spring, and then you saw it hit the UK the last month, and we saw cases rise almost exponentially. You see this go almost up, straight up. Very fast, hit it very hard. In the United States, we're getting hit by the Delta variant. The good thing and the good news is the vaccines, about almost 70% of the United States adult population is vaccinated. Most of the older people are vaccinated. Remember, I said the age is the biggest risk factor. And so we see that people are not dying as much. But we now see an increase in hospitalizations and deaths in unvaccinated people, at almost 99% of cases in hospitals being unvaccinated people. What is the takeaway message is? If you're vaccinated, you should be fine from the Delta variant. It might cause a cold, it might cause some diarrhea, it might cause you to feel tired, but you won't end up in the hospital. For the unvaccinated, many of you will probably beat it if you did catch it. But if you did catch it and it hits you hard, you can end up hospitalized, struggling to breathe. And that's a very scary thing unless you've ever been through it. They intubate you, they do a lot of aggressive things, and then they start putting a lot of drugs into you. So when people say, I don't want to take another drug or I don't want to take a vaccine because I don't want to put something into my body, when you're in that situation where you are hospitalized, you don't have many options. And so many people ask, how effective is this vaccine against the Delta variant? Because it's such a new variant, is the vaccine actually good at it? So from the Public Health England, Service, that's the National Service for the Public Health of England. England has a nationalized healthcare system similar to Canada, in which it's unified and they can track things. They found that it's 88% effective at preventing symptomatic COVID-19. The Public Health England routinely monitors cases. And so they do testing, they look at the strains, and they found that it's about 88% effective at preventing symptomatic COVID-19. The CDC estimates in the American population, which is a bit different, it's about 75 to 85% effective. Still very effective at preventing symptomatic COVID-19. Why am I saying symptomatic COVID-19? Because the vaccine is actually 97% effective at preventing severe COVID-19. What does severe COVID-19 mean? Severe COVID-19 is basically you having COVID-19 to the point where you need to go to the hospital for oxygen. You need to get hospitalized because you can't breathe. That is severe COVID-19. And so it's 97% effective relative to unvaccinated people at reducing symptoms, right? And so if your risk is 1% for your age, you have a 97% reduction, right? You do the math, you decrease that by 97%, you have a very small risk. And so that's why the vaccines are very good. This is 97% after 6 months. It's very, very, very good. And in the United States, government has found a similar efficacy for the COVID-19 vaccine. If you're a bit older, if you are pushing 70, 75, 80, it's probably lower than 97%. If you are young, it's virtually 100%. If you're in the middle, it's 97%. Very, very good. And so let's talk about the news a little bit. You turn on MSNBC and this comes on. Rochelle Walensky is a CDC director. She's the lead director of the Infectious Disease Agency in the United States, and then tracks diseases in the United States and other things, and takes numbers and epidemiology. And what she said was that new indoor mask guidance for fully vaccinated as Delta variant fuels rise in cases nationwide. For fully vaccinated, I thought in April, the vaccinated people did not have to wear a mask. Then the CDC this week comes and says, you have to wear a mask. So many people started panicking and they were asked why. Then later in the week, they said, this is about Friday, so very recently, the CDC said breakthrough infections may be as transmissible as unvaccinated cases. The media saw it and they ran with it. It scared everybody. People took the vaccine not only for themselves, but to protect others. And now the CDC is saying that against this Delta variant, you might have the same amount of virus in you as somebody who's unvaccinated. Why would I even take this vaccine? What was the point of that? Does this even work? So many people who are anti-vax start to run with that. And they say, see, we told you so. You took a vaccine that doesn't even work. And a lot of people have fear. And then people start to say, are we going back into lockdown? What's going to happen now? Is this pandemic going to last forever? People are frustrated. People are afraid. And many of us don't know what's going to happen in the future. And so I want to talk about that a little bit more. And we'll get to what we call breakthrough infections. You've probably heard it on the news. This is why I personally, I don't like watching CNN. I prefer to read the news because news is dramatized, right? Trump is not president anymore, so they need to dramatize something. So they chose to talk about breakthrough infection. That anxiety that it creates, it gets you to watch more news, and you talk about breakthrough infections, and you start thinking about it. Is this vaccine actually working? Maybe I should not do the behaviors I thought I should do. Maybe I should avoid certain places. Maybe I should avoid certain people. What do we know about breakthrough infections? Does the vaccine protect me from the Delta variant? Is the vaccine effective at reducing transmission? We talked about the Delta variant and the vaccine. The vaccine reduces severe deaths by 97, severe hospitalizations by 97%, and virtually for deaths actually by 100%. It's very rare that people die after vaccination, even if they get hit with the Delta variant. So is the vaccine effective at reducing transmission? Because the CDC said viral load is the same as unvaccinated people. So is the vaccine actually doing anything? And so the CDC definition of a breakthrough infection is actually detection of virus genetic material via PCR. Many of you have to take the test if you want to travel to Ghana or abroad, or the antigen test. The antigen is basically another way to test in your blood to see if you have antibodies. Sometimes the antibodies acutely respond to infection. So those are two ways we can detect the virus. And so that's what the CDC defines it as. If you are able to detect the virus in somebody, they have a breakthrough infection if they've been fully vaccinated. And so your risk of breakthrough infections increase as cases increase. I want everybody to know that. Your risk of breakthrough infections increase as cases increase. So I want to use a metaphor that people understand. Imagine you have an open goal. Many people like to watch football. In America, we say soccer. But in football, you have an open goal. Imagine you had no goalie. This is what it's like to be unvaccinated. You can take as many shots on goal and you're going to score. The vaccine is trying to score on your body. Now, many of us remember in 2010, the World Cup in South Africa, Ghana got to the quarterfinals and was trying to be the first African team to make the semifinals. And Ghana faced Uruguay. And remember, Luis Suarez, the former Barcelona star, got in the way. Also, there's the goalkeeper and the defense. That is what you call vaccination. That's what vaccines do. It prevents the opposing offense from scoring in your goal. And so remember what happened. Tragically, Luis Suarez decided to cheat the rules and use a handball to stop the goal from happening, preventing Ghana from scoring in extra time, and Ghana lost in penalty kicks. And so the vaccine is basically a defense for your body. But what happens if you keep shooting? Imagine if Ghana shot the ball 20, 30 times. Imagine if you gave Asamoah Gyan more shots. Imagine you gave him 40 tries. He missed the penalty. He missed many of these shots. But if you imagine if you gave him 40 more times, surely he would make a goal. And that's exactly what it is. When we have more cases in the community, your body's able to defend against the virus after vaccination. The vaccine teaches your body how to defend it. But if you're constantly bombarded, constantly hit, eventually one virus is going to break through and invade the immune system. Your body, however, will be able to control the shots on goal and prevent the other team from winning in penalty kicks. You still prevent severe disease. You will feel symptomatic. That's what a breakthrough infection is. Many shots on goal, eventually the virus scores. But it does not win the game. The game is death. And your virus and the vaccine is almost virtually undefeated at preventing death. And so in the United States, the CDC tracks breakthrough infections. They look for breakthrough infections looking at hospitalizations. Remember, when I said symptomatic COVID, that 88% reduction or that 75% reduction, depending on who you're listening to, that's actually in symptoms. So the symptoms, the diarrhea, the headaches, those are breakthrough infections. Those are not necessarily the same as hospitalizations. And so the CDC defines hospitalizations as breakthrough infections in post-vaccinated people. And that happens very rarely. 1 in 200,000 fully vaccinated people have died after an outbreak. That's about 6,200 cases. And they actually did follow-up. They did an investigation of breakthrough infections. And they looked to see that in actuality, about 5,000 people, this is as of July 26, about 5,000 people have had breakthrough infections and been hospitalized. And less than 1,000 if you actually take away the other cases, that 309 cases of asymptomatic or not related to COVID-19. So less than 1,000 people post-vaccination have died. What does that mean? That's 1 in 40,000 for hospitalization and 1 in 200,000. That's zero. I don't know what 1 divided by 200,000 is. That is zero in most people's mind. And so what does that mean? For yourself, that means breakthrough infections, yes, they may occur. You may become symptomatic, but that's not the same thing as a breakthrough infection causing a hospitalization. That's what you care about. You know how to deal with a cold. You know how to deal with the flu. You've had that in your lifetime. You just stay at home and you relax and you heal, you drink more fluids, your body will take care of the rest. The vaccine's very good at that. The vaccine is the last stop. It's the last stop gap in preventing you from dying. And that's why the vaccine is very powerful. So when people talk about, oh, the vaccine's not doing anything, the vaccine stops deaths virtually. It's almost zero risk of dying after you've been vaccinated. And so this is how you can see breakthrough infections. On the bottom is on the screen is actually a chart. And I want you guys, I'll give you guys about 5 seconds to find the yellow dot. If you can find the yellow dot, please write it in the chat. I'll give you 5 seconds. Okay, pretty sure that no one has saw the yellow dot. The yellow dot was in the corner. And that represents the the risk that people have, right? Of dying from COVID. And so basically for every 100,000, assuming that the rate is actually higher than what the CDC says, there'll be 1 death. So you do not have to worry about dying from COVID-19 if you've been vaccinated. And so this is a similar representation. All it shows is that severe disease is almost non-existent. We don't even put that here on this visual representation. You might have moderate disease, you might have a mild disease, but a vast majority is asymptomatic. You don't feel anything. That 88%, you don't feel anything for the average person. And if you're very healthy, you take care of yourself, you probably will have an asymptomatic infection. So what about transmission? So why did the CDC say that they think that the viral loads are similar for vaccinated and unvaccinated? Case study of what happened in Barnstable, Massachusetts. That's the county that has Cape Cod. Cape Cod is a rich area that many people go vacation. President Obama frequently goes to Cape Cod. And so in this county, it's very liberal, and so many people took up the vaccine. They had vaccination rates of over 70%. And then in the July 4th, that's for the Canadians, July 4th is America's Independence Day, many people started to gather indoors. And because mask mandates were relaxed, a lot of people came in very close quarters. And if you think about it, the vaccine should prevent any big spread or any big outbreak. And then they started to see there's increasing cases in Barnstable County, that Cape Cod place. And the CDC published a report. They were doing an internal report, but that leaked to the news outlets. And then people heard that the viral load for unvaccinated versus vaccinated is the same. And so from this study, they showed that the unvaccinated and the fully vaccinated were similar. And which led people to conclude, and led the CDC to conclude, the viral load of the vaccinated versus unvaccinated for Delta is the same. There's problems with that study. And a lot of scientists have come out to critique it. Even the Biden administration have come out to critique it because it just looked at one time point. Imagine I came into your life and I saw you at the worst moment in your life and said, that is who you are. No, I get to know you over time. And so actual studies from around the world, this comes from Singapore, found that the viral load initially is about the same, but the body starts to elicit an immune reaction, antibodies and T cells, to rapidly clear the virus. And so that is what happens. Your body's able to clear it faster and you're less infectious over time. And so there's gonna be a lot more research, but I warn everybody to not over rely on initial studies. That's what happens. The media takes these initial studies, starts to run with it, and starts to say that breakthrough infections happen more commonly, but that's not the truth. The truth is we don't really know, and the CDC sampled one time point. There are more better design studies that show that over time, the body clears it faster. You have to give the antibodies and the T cells time to react to it. And vaccinated people clear it much faster than unvaccinated people. Many scientists, leading scholars at the top institutions said they don't agree with this, and they're pretty sure that this is not the case. And even in real world studies in Israel, they looked at healthcare workers and they tracked every healthcare worker that had a breakthrough infection, and they looked at their close contacts, who they live with, and they found that the cases were not transmitted. The breakthrough infection was not transmitted to the people they live with. They weren't transmitted to their kids. They weren't transmitted to their wives. They weren't transmitted to any close contact, people they came into contact. So we have real world data and actual people to show that the actual breakthrough infections weren't actually causing spread. And so this is something that's ongoing, but I want to caution people to stop saying, oh, vaccines, unvaccinated people, doesn't matter. Breakthrough infections happen and then you're more infectious. No, that's not necessarily the case. And this is something of ongoing research. The CDC said to wear a mask indoor, and I believe that's true. Right now, it's better to wear a mask indoors because it protects others and protects yourself. So right now, just wear a mask. I don't want to wear a mask either, but we wear masks indoors because the spread is more contagious indoors. Outdoors is better ventilation. So will there be booster doses? And I'm going to wrap up pretty soon. There's a lot of controversy, there's a lot of debate. The CDC and many agencies are leaning towards getting booster doses for age 65 and above, and the immunocompromised, because they feel that a third dose might be helpful. Pfizer released a 6-month update this week, actually, and they said that the actual efficacy for symptomatic infection declines by 6% every 2 months. But this is Pfizer. Remember, Pfizer is a company that's in it to make money. And so they have a financial interest to get more vaccines outside. So the United States government has a financial interest to not pay for more vaccines, and a financial interest and a duty to not harm the public. And so they want to see that this is important, right? You don't want to keep vaccinating people if it's not necessary. And at 6 months, the vaccine was about 97% effective at preventing severe disease. So it's virtually 100% effective. And so the CDC, the FDA is going to have to battle it out with Pfizer. And Pfizer's going to have to prove that this is the case, that we need booster doses. So scientists, a lot of scientists believe that vaccine actually provides immunity for life because the T cells actually lived in your body for a very long time. And so if you ever encounter the virus, it activates your immune system, and the immune system rapidly clears it, and then your immune system becomes better at fighting the vaccine next time. There've been studies to show, the virus next time. There've been studies to show that if you get reinfected, you have more ability to fight the virus. And so scientists believe that the 2 vaccinations is probably enough to last for a lifetime. And so there's a lot of controversies, and they're going to need to do a lot of clinical trials, and they're going to need a lot of studies to prove that a booster dose is necessary. And who knows what that variant might emerge. That might actually tip in the favor of booster dose. But for now, it looks like the vaccine is very good against all the type of variants that are circulating right now. And the vaccine is very good at preventing death, and that has been stable. So boosters, maybe. Now to wrap up, I'm approaching 40 minutes. What can the church do to safely open? Now that there's a Delta variant, before, I thought churches could fully open and have no masks because, a lot of people were getting vaccinated, and a lot of people had natural immunity from previous infection. But the Delta variant is changing a lot because it's very aggressive and is infecting people who were previously infected, and it might be infected people who are vaccinated. So what can people do? Basic hand hygiene. Wash your hands. It's very effective. But from research, we actually learned that COVID is not actually really transmitted on surfaces, not that much. It's pretty rare. So it's not that COVID can be transmitted from a surface, what we call fomites, but it's not necessarily happening. They've been doing a lot of studies to show that deep cleaning actually doesn't do anything. So if you have the deacons in your church, deacons and deaconesses, deep cleaning is not necessary. You can wipe down the mics, you can do other things, but you don't have to wipe every single surface in the church. Basic hand hygiene is enough. The churches should also conduct anonymous surveys on how many people are vaccinated. I think that's very important because you don't compromise people's health privacy, but you do understand how many people are vaccinated and what percentage of your church is towards herd immunity. The local health departments at your church can figure out a way to do that in a way that protects the privacy rights of your church members. And I encourage churches to do that. HEPA filters. I'll show you on another slide. HEPA filters are very effective at circulating air. A lot of churches don't have central air. And so, central air, AC. And so, HEPA filters are actually really good at sucking the air in the room and filtering it to remove viral particles and putting out clean air. And so, HEPA filters have been recommended by the CDC for spaces that there's not a lot of ventilation or small spaces. And so, churches can buy HEPA filters at a cost of anywhere from $100 to $1,000, depending on the size of the HEPA filter, and run those during services and protect the people of the church. They can also upgrade the HVAC system, so that's systems that circulate the air in the church, to reduce aerosols. So basically, when you speak, that puts virus in the air. If you have a good HVAC system, it can remove a lot of the viral particles. So if the church has enough money, they can also invest in the HVAC system, which is an investment for long term. All church members should be vaccinated until further notice. You can make use of outdoors. It's summer right now. You have nice weather. If you want, I've been to certain churches in person. A lot of them are not eating after church. You could literally use the outdoor space if your church has enough physical space to go outside and potentially eat. Physically distance people, tell people to use some common sense and eat outdoors. Why not? We know for studies that outdoor transmission is very rare. The wind, the natural air that God provides, ventilates everything. And vaccinations should be frequently discussed and promoted. Vaccination is going to be something you're going to hear about. If you're tired of hearing about it, I'm sorry, but there's too many people that are not vaccinated, and the church has to talk about it. If you're in the local health department at your church, start reading about it and start talking about it. talk to the elders and the leaders of your church to start scheduling program to discuss the vaccination. And I'll tell you, I'm more than happy to come via Zoom or in person if you're in the Northeast to come and talk about vaccination. I think it's very important, and it's the most important health threat to Black people. And so vaccination is incredibly important to talk about. So this is the HEPA filter. This is what it is. It's a machine that sucks the air and cleans it. It puts it through a filter, sort of like a mask, but it filters out the bioparticles, kills it, and puts out clean air. And so it circulates the air in the room. Get a couple of these in a big space, and you can provide cleaner air for people, reduce the risk of transmission. You don't want the air to not move. You want the air to move. And so these HEPA filters, some are very good, some are very silent. You can put them in the servers and have lower transmission in your church. CDC has recommended them. And then also look at local guidelines. So these are some rules of thumb to think about for the health departments. You typically want your cases in your local area. You can look that up online. The cases should be about 5 to 10 per 100,000. That's a number that we usually hear. Or the positivity. So the positivity rate, you just Google it. A lot of the local, you can literally Google where you are and you talk about the positivity rate. It'll give you the number. You want the positivity rate to be a little bit less than 10%. And you want the positivity ideally to be less than 5%. And if you're afraid, double masking is known to more protect you and decrease the number of particles that you put out. And so viral particles are decreased by 97%. Legal aspects, quickly, churches can ask about vaccination status. They can refuse entry of unvaccinated. It's very legal across the place. Many businesses do that. The churches similarly consider that. If you're in a Republican area, that might be different. If you have lawmakers, or if you're in Canada, if you have, depending on the politics of the place, the local laws may prohibit this, but it's important to protect the health privacy. And it's better not to stigmatize people. But there are, legally, the church can ask you if you're vaccinated prior to entry and refuse entry. I don't think that's necessary, but that is actually something that is potentially on the table. Mandates. There's a carrot and a stick. The United States government has started to try to use carrots. So as the Canadian government, they try to incentivize people to get vaccinated. The stick, proverbially, is death. But the also stick is coming in that you can lose your job or you can't go to school. Or you can't fly to certain countries. Vaccine passports are coming. But before this happens, the FDA really needs to approve everything. And so the FDA is actually currently reviewing millions of pages of data. They want to look at all the data that Pfizer can get to make sure the vaccine is safe and effective. And this typically takes 10 months, but it's being speeded up to 6 months. And you can expect that full approval between August and October. Once the FDA approves the vaccine, moving it from emergency use authorization to full phase 3 approval, a lot of businesses have said they will come forward and institute vaccine mandates. And so if you want a job, it's going to be difficult if you're unvaccinated because a lot of big businesses will institute vaccine mandates. And that's already happening right now. Facebook, Google, Netflix, Morgan Stanley have all the policies that their employees have to have vaccination. New York State has said all employees need to get vaccinated or get tested periodically. Federal government has said all employees need to be vaccinated. And for students, they don't even have the ability to get tested. If you want to come back in person to campus, starting in August and this fall, you have to be vaccinated. And that's 600 universities, major universities across the country. And that number is growing every day. And in Canada, the picture's mixed. Certain universities do it, certain don't. But Canada overall has one of the highest percentages of their population vaccinated. So Canada doesn't even really need to use these methods, but it might happen in Canada too. So wrapping up, so we can get time for the discussion. What is next for the pandemic? You saw the Delta variant is very aggressive. It happened and it went very high, higher than most waves of the pandemic. But in the UK, we saw that things are starting to fall very rapidly. So what goes up must come down. And so the cases are coming down rapidly in the UK. And so the UK is actually a month ahead of us in the Delta wave. And so we can expect to see the United States and Canada, which is actually pretty well off in terms of cases per capita. We're going to see the cases rapidly fall within about 3 weeks to a month. So it might seem bad for the next couple of weeks, but they will start to fall. What goes up must come down because after you have been infected, you gain immunity. So more infections, more vaccinations equal more population immunity. And so as Time goes on, more people have immunity, and we'll see less waves like this one we're seeing right now. Ghana. What's going on in Ghana? Briefly, Ghana had COVAX. COVAX was actually the organization that is internationally funded by the WHO to deliver vaccines. And Ghana was the first country in the world to receive COVAX vaccines that got AstraZeneca about 1.3 million doses, and they distributed it to people. And the president of Ghana has promised that 18 million doses by October will be delivered. 17 million of those doses would be Johnson & Johnson, the one I talked about, and 1 million will be Pfizer vaccines. And then they'll actually get about 250,000 of AstraZeneca. And so Ghana is gonna get a lot of vaccines by October because Ghana's actually experienced a Delta wave too. How about new variants? It's possible. There's not enough people vaccinated. There's not enough people who have a strong immunity. And so the virus has opportunities to mutate. Could it become more infectious? Yes. Could it become more deadly? Possibly. So far, the vaccines have been able to hold the line and prevent that. And so to summarize, vaccines reduce transmissions. Vaccines are near 100% effective at preventing death. Wear a mask indoors. That is the message. Vaccines reduce transmissions because we know this from every vaccine that's produced. Most vaccines reduce transmission, and vaccines are near 100% effective at preventing deaths. Wear a mask indoors. Make the right decision for your body, for your health, for your family, and for your community. And I like to finish on these words. Where there's no counsel, the people fall. But in the multitude of counselor, there is safety. And also, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge because you have rejected knowledge. Hosea 4, verse 6. And this is what we used to go to. This is 2019 camp meeting. It's in person. Now we're on Zoom. But I want to give people hope that maybe in 2020, and my belief, I think in 2020, we can get back to full camp meeting. And I believe in the future, we're not gonna have to mask, we're not gonna have to socially distance. We will get past this. Society has gotten past this before. God has not left us. We will move past it. Make the right decision and protect yourself. And now I'd like to open up for questions. I went 10 minutes over. And so depending on how the program leaders want to go, I can give questions. But remember, I'll provide my email so you can contact me if you want to talk a little bit more. And I'm willing to come to the local church to talk about it. So I'm open for questions.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen.
I have a question.
Amen.
David.
You don't have to ask the question in English. You can actually.
David. Okay. Ansana, the books are questions. No, ebi amen can't wait quickly. David, say be a obey me. I want to share.
Okay.
David, it's a language be a okatwi pa na oka brofo no so ba oka brofo no mo ba twi bi obeka bia so no David eti twi bi obeka bia no David eti nti se na opese ubusa question bia no feel free to ask it in whatever.
Yo, Edamo, I say, before I'm say, first question, I'm say, now the cast animal or can be said when we are indoors, we have to wear a mask to protect ourselves. Do you mean that when we are sleeping too, we have to cover, we have to use the mask? Because indoors, it all applies that we have to, when we are sleeping too. Because I still don't get it. Say, you were insider, we have to cover ourselves. Then our children, how are they going to survive?
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Yeah, that's my
question. No, you don't have to wear a mask when you're sleeping. You don't have to wear a mask in your own house. That's your household. Whatever you have will be transmitted to your household, right? If you do get infected, it's recommended that you mask and distance from your own family because you don't want to give them the virus. However, if you are by yourself, you do not have to mask. If you're with your family or in your home, you don't have to mask. But if you enter public places, it's recommended that you do mask, especially in areas of high transmission. So mask for now. As cases come down, you probably won't have to mask, but we don't know what the timeline is. We don't know if new variants will emerge. So right now the guidance is mask when you're indoors. Outdoors, you're fine. If you're not around a lot of people and you're not standing still, it's okay to take off your mask because the air ventilates everything. So mask indoors, in public, not at your own home.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, when you were talking, you said when you take the COVID vaccine, you're not going to get you're not going to die or but so the videos, the Uber say be a news be no be a chat. No man can say be oh be taking COVID vaccine no or nyana shock and answer. Yes, be a very serious. And also so you better then I found because I am international news I say and WhatsApp and the Facebook near there and so take vaccines in there. Or when faith are very serious.
Yeah.
So and then I'll bet me I can find me that's
a good question. So I'll say this. Do not follow what you see on WhatsApp. It's misinformation. Why do I say that? Because people will take stories that they don't understand or they probably heard and say, this is what's happening. People are not dying from the vaccine in terms of mRNA vaccine, right? Because what happened is people who are not fully vaccinated may catch COVID, right? Or they may die from an unrelated cause, right? Just because you get the COVID vaccine doesn't mean that the COVID vaccine is protecting you from all illnesses. So if you have the COVID vaccine and you're fully vaccinated, and then 14 days later you had a heart attack, that doesn't mean the heart attack killed you. Hypertension probably killed you. Other causes of diseases probably killed you. And so what the researchers do is that we look for increases in death. We have to look at a population level, not the individual, and look to see if people are dying from certain causes. And if that happens, like in the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, when there were blood clots in women, they pause it and then they investigate a little bit more and then they decide. But in general, do not believe what you see on WhatsApp. It's very, very misleading. It'll scare a lot of people. Use averages, right? If you get vaccinated, you have a virtually 0% chance of dying. I don't care what you say about what you saw on WhatsApp. I've seen the videos. I watched the videos. It's misinformation. And remember, when you spread that, when you share that, you cause people to not take the vaccine and you put their life at risk because they're starting to take behavior that is dangerous. Imagine somebody sees a video that says, oh, the COVID vaccine kills you. So they're afraid. Or they heard something that the COVID vaccine kills you. So they don't take the COVID vaccine and then they get the Delta variant. And then they land in the hospital. And the doctors in the hospital can't save them, and they die. That misinformation killed that person. And so it's important to follow official sources, follow the Canadian government, follow the US government. If you don't trust the government, remember, this pandemic is a worldwide thing. There's things that happen around the world. And so if the United States is lying, you will hear from another country. And if that country's lying, you will hear from the United States, and so on. But it's important.
Okay, I want to ask something about what you just said, that I think a lot of people need education about that, especially the Ghanaian community. They are following all those stuff, and because of that, some people refuse to take the vaccine because of what they hear and what they are following. So as a church, we need education about that so that people can take the vaccine. Thank you.
Dr. Mpacho, Mr. Wada, so COVID in the buyer, no, on say, the near how Kakran one year, mano. Your money, the achievement, say, and shed that a ham. But very anti, we know, minim a home to transfer a war, your mana, Ibia, COVID-19, grano, Omu, still, I know, I want some to say, boy, that's it.
Remember when I showed that graph, the age risk, right? By the risk of dying by age. Children have a virtually zero risk, right? In the United States, we probably had about 400 to 500 children die because of COVID. It seemed like a lot, but if you remember, the United States has hundreds, if not hundreds of millions of people who are below the age of 18 who qualify as children. And so that risk is actually virtually very low. And so they estimate the risk for an average kid, even before vaccination, is very low, even probably lower than most adults after vaccination. And so kids, we know, do not get severe COVID-19 on average. You rarely go, you can go to a hospital right now, go talk to the pediatricians and see how many kids have COVID-19 in the hospital. And then ask them what conditions they have. Those kids probably have cancer, they have something immunocompromised, something. So we know that kids do not really get sick from COVID-19. However, the kids can spread it. Kids have a better immune system than adults because they're younger. And so kids actually control the infection faster. So they actually clear it faster than adults. So they're actually less infectious than adults, but they still infect people. Now, what does that mean for you? Kids are the CDC and the FDA are looking to vaccinate kids to reduce community spread, to also protect them against the Delta variant. The Delta variant is not killing kids more because it's not killing adults more. Kids are doing fine. And in the United States, they're actually opening school and encouraging everybody to go in person. It's very important because school is much better in person. And the risk of dying from COVID is very low if you are a child. I'll say that again. The risk of dying from COVID is very low if you are a child. The kid has, a child actually has a greater risk of dying in a car accident, much greater risk, 10, maybe 100 times greater risk of dying in a car accident than to die from COVID-19. And so kids are safe from school. The question is, can they actually get community spread? Are their parents safe, right? What if the kid contracts COVID and brings it to their parents? And so they recommended masks for children, and they recommended that all schools try to be open. And so you see in New York State has said that all kids will come to in person. There will be no Zoom this year. And they're gonna try to stick to that. Unless the virus becomes more deadly, there's a new strain, they're gonna stick to that as much as possible, and they're gonna try to vaccinate kids. The CDC and the FDA are running studies to try to get the vaccine to them later this fall. But for now, kids are safe. You don't have to worry about your child dying from COVID. If you don't believe me, ask all your friends how many of their childs have actually been hospitalized from COVID or died. You won't find anybody virtually. And so this is not my opinion, this is actual research. UNICEF and other organizations have come out to say, kids need to go back to school, children are safe from COVID-19, it's better that we vaccinate them in case anything happens in the future. And you will know the schools will close if it's unsafe for children. But children are fine. They will mask in school to reduce the spread, and they'll be fine.
Dave, yeah, well, Obi will line so I pay Janet such a friend Ajua, Obi so chat. The question is, what do you say about the disposable mask? Which type would you recommend? And we are Obi Eddie Ajua, Tiama Ajua, Wapijan and Salmon, and Kana Fadimi Nubum, Ajua Obi to Akasa. Okay, Medase, the Pocho Basim Bisani say, send your BD Kaka say news near the Naya try who say be more Moko vaccine. Omanya, ebia whole side effects, they so severe. Now, me person me bisa sada na companies no more these vaccines no. Omun take responsibilities. Ebia obi ko wona say onya or how we chira. Masim bisa no. That's
great question. So to answer the first question about masks, N95 are the best. There are even masks that are better than N95, but that's for special people who deal with viruses. But N95 are hospital grade. Then you have KN95. KN95s are, you can buy at the store, are pretty good. You can buy on Amazon. At first, in the beginning of the pandemic, there's a shortage. Now there's plenty of KN95s. You can buy that. Then surgical masks, you can buy that too. Halyard, there are different companies that sell surgical masks. Those are pretty good too. Those blue masks that you see are really good too. The bad masks are like the ones that you have over your neck, the ones with a filter like this, you know, if you see that it has a filter on the side, those are very bad. The FDA does not recommend that. And then you have cloth masks. Cloth masks are not very good, but they work in terms of protecting, in terms of at least reducing some of the droplets. But like I said in the presentation, you can double mask. You can wear an N95 and you can put a cloth mask on it. You can get an N95 and put a surgical mask on it. You just want to have something that's reasonable. But you know, if you're vaccinated, a mask is fine. You don't have to go over the top for a crazy mask. If you believe that you have a lot of risk factors, such as hypertension, diabetes, that's very common in our population, cancer, invest in a better mask. And double mask if you're in a setting where you feel you're not safe. Next question that Auntie brought up was very good. Are the drug companies liable if they cause death? Yes, they are. if they report the information that they receive to be false and they knowingly suppress that, they are liable to lawsuits and they lose trust. Their stocks will plummet because people can't trust that. Remember, if you're developing a vaccine for the whole world, you have to make it safe enough for the whole world to take, virtually. And so if they start to have lots of side effects and it comes to light, the company loses its reputation and it gets remembered as the company that killed people and lied to people. So Pfizer would not be viable if they had a vaccine that's not good. But remember, we also have the FDA. The FDA right now is looking for the phase 3. Right now it's on EOA, emergency use authorization. The FDA is reviewing it for phase 3, and they're looking at millions of pages of data. They're going line by line, multiple experts looking to see if they're telling the truth. So we have processes to make sure that these vaccines are safe. And in Canada, they're also doing the same thing. UK is also doing the same thing. Israel is doing the same thing. Ghana is doing this. A lot of countries around the world. And so you have a lot of eyes on it, right? If a lot of eyes can't miss something. And so that's why I tell people, get vaccinated, because a lot of people with the interest to make sure that we protect our people are looking at it. And so when people say, oh, they're lying, you have to lie against a lot of people. And so a lot of people are looking at the data to make sure it's safe. And if they're not safe and the companies lie about it and they play with the numbers and it gets people to die, they are liable. They can be held accountable in court. It's criminal action, it's civil action, and it can be very damaging financially. And so it's important that the companies tell the truth and the government hold them accountable. And governments around the world also hold them accountable. I don't know how we're doing on time. So if the leaders of the program want to tell me how we're doing on time, that'd be great before we have more questions.
Doctor, I'm set your time. No, I'm set. I just want to it must just about one question here, and then now you're wrapping up.
My question. I have a question.
Maybe time no aso ho na me hu say nkrofo asende questions bi e wo chat no munti esrema a doctor for ne health professionals mo wo lines no ebi ho no na say mo betimi answer e wo chat no so amayen a eni beje ho sapa because ye bre no ntini ye ntimi enkenkan ni nyina answer but say wo ho nimge bi atiti mo am wo health mo mo na mo answer na bia yenye one last question na afi
Hello.
I have a question. One point that is very confusing to people is when they say 60% efficacy, 30% efficacy, because you can see the differences between the vaccines in terms of efficacy. What does efficacy mean? If you can explain that to us.
Great question, Pastor. So efficacy is basically a relative number. So what does that mean? We actually, I'm going to hurry up to finish it. What does that mean? You can, to measure a vaccine, you compare it to people. You can't just say any random number. You compare the people who received the vaccine versus the people who did not receive the vaccine, the unvaccinated. So the 97% or the 60% efficacy refers to symptoms, right? You have severe COVID-19, which is which causes hospitalizations and deaths. That's almost 100% across the board for all vaccines that are now used in the United States and in Canada. And then you have symptomatic COVID-19. So when the mRNA vaccine came out, they said 95%, 94% for Moderna. That was at the strain at the time, and that was 94% reduction. So what does that mean? To do the simple math, you do 1 minus 0.94, so you have 0.06 times the rate of symptoms in a regular unvaccinated person. It seems like a complicated subject, but that means that you have a much smaller risk. So if you look at my hands, if this is your risk, right, for having symptoms, and you get vaccinated, you get a 97% reduction, right? So it's almost like about 3%. So that's what it means. It's a relative concept compared to a vaccinated person. I mean, compared to an unvaccinated person, you have a 97% lower percentage. It's a relative risk reduction in having disease. And so if there's less virus in the population, your relative risk actually falls. And so that's what they mean by it. And so people are having breakthrough infections because there's more virus, so there's the greater risk. And even if you reduce it by 97%, you still have something left. And that's what's happening. And so when you talk about the efficacy, they're usually referring to the symptoms. But for hospitalizations and death, the vaccine is 99.9999 whatever % effective at preventing death. For symptoms, currently for the Delta variant, it is about 85 to 75% effective at reducing your symptoms compared to an unvaccinated person. A little bit complicated, but that's what it means. So you can just think about your risk. This is your risk, and this is what's happening. And so if there's less virus, you have a smaller risk. Even if there's a lot of virus, you still have a very low chance of getting hospitalized and dying because it's almost 100% effective. It's zero. You can't see this gap between my fingers. Hope that helps.
Okay, Dr. Pipraya, but that was Sibibre and Umre, and Yamina Mosodia, Babusia for sending Dr. Kayano. This is a very exhaustive discussion. We can actually finish it today. And until your best Munina said, Dr. Fona more in life, Zena Panyajina Kayano, chatting questions near Bano, one more with the answering of it. Dr. Pipraya indicates he's over sharing a contact so we can reach out to him and then use them for your church programs, your health department, and the moment was a quine so. Yadi Jumedia, Dihono Air, by you check a song from Boston Choir. You are Sorpenny Benjamin Ajimai from Riverside. Ebedi Nim for your prayer session. And you see, I never could hear and you know, now you are not Sorpenny Ajimai at Waswamai. Onyankopɔn safo na mo nyinaa adwo ebre yɛ yɛduru mu no nso so no kyerɛ sɛ nyinaa yɛ ebre yɛ komase na ansa na no yɛbɛkɔ yɛ mpa yɛ no so yɛbɛda ɛhɔ atwede mpɔn ase yɛde yɛ duru ɛna edi kan yɛna etumi ba so mprɛnsa no nyinaa no nya nsɛm akɛseɛ na nwumere deɛ deɛ kyɛn so da ɛno nti mehyira Dr. Pepra deɛ so na afei yɛde yɛ mpa ɛbɔ brɛ no ahyɛse yɛhoa yɛda wase nwumere ade kyɛ kɛkɛ na wode akyɛ yɛn mmɔfra yi yɛ mmɔfra a yɛde wɔn yɛbɛwɔ wɔn ha wɔn papa no wɔn maame ɔkoa mekae paa kambɛhyɛ na ɔyɛ mmeranteɛ nkwadaa nketewa sisi a yɛn nananom no yɛ mma ɛna akyerɛkyerɛ yɛn ɛyɛ agyapadeɛ a wode ama yɛn a yɛhyia aha yi wadom yɛn o yɛde yɛn nyinaa wode yɛn afam yɛn nan nso so wode yɛn abɛduru akyerɛ sɛ wo Awurade na sɛ wode yɛn nim deɛ na yɛnim na yɛtiaeɛ na mmom mamfa asɛm ammerɛ yɛn no kyerɛ sɛ wura woahyira so yɛde adeɛ ɛde asɛm brɛ yɛn no mpo no wode yɛn anantimi abɛduru saa bere yɛde wase ɔho adeɛ no wayɛ bio no afei wɔ yɛn anim no yɛnim sɛ wode yɛn bɛkɔ nti yɛserɛ wo ɛde yɛn nante anwummerɛ yi yɛbrɛ yɛ koma ase na afei yɛbɛ yɛde yɛn nsɛm ato anim yɛakra na akɔ akɔdeda ɛno nti yɛserɛ wo brɛ yɛn mfimfini ɛberɛ a yɛfrɛ wo yi wadom nti amen yɛmpa yi a ɛdi kan no ante Paulina a wɔwɔ Michiana asafom ɛna ɔbɛbɔ ama yɛn nnuanom monim sɛdeɛ mede kan kaeɛ no me ankasa deɛ mepagya me nsa ma mo ɛfiri sɛ ɛbɛyɛ mfie kakra ni na yɛne mo East Coast fo mu yɛntɛm teteyɛ ɛnɛ Awurade ama yɛn kwan sɛ yɛnom a yɛte bɛdi California ha nso so no Awurade aka yɛn asan de yɛn abɛka ho bio ɛno nti no yɛda mo ase yɛda Awurade ase na ne nyinaa nkamfua no
afidie so mpo no sesi amhwe nipa ahensia aduanan ena wo so ye ho a wahwe yen de adure no hia seda ye ho a wakasa ye ho adure no hia seda ye yade mu ye suku kromu kan besha koye ne nkoda nyina na dadan ba kom ye tumri kiti aduane ye bedie mpo ye sori anopa ne aba New York aba beto ansa na ye nya bibia mamofra ye di de awrade afia achira yen de adure no se ana se ani pa bone for pa ni tiafo ante Paulina ya namu na de awrade ase wona de kese a waya ma yen aye wo kure mu ne titru Ghana memendafo a wo kure mu na ni age anumre yie na mu se ye ho a aka ye hu no ni emos no mo no mo hyase no ano awie me ho se emos so ani age de ye ho asema ye ante Paulina menkasa bi mo me mo mpa
If I'm a child, mommy, I'm umpire, Judy4. Yes, Regima for Nania me, Jabba Tampa. Namia, we ye. I just say, be she say, I never see that was a dear Layanka. Say the why am I and the door so right here? There was say, yet was say, it was so we ain't a mere. We ain't a mere strong con. Yet me and ya would dear watcher walk. If saying Yami Munina. Una uyenya make se so na wo adie awrade de wase ye de wase hye adwumadie yase hwadwene a wodi amaye mpanyimfo na awrade nhihya wo mo aye ade amaye awrade de wase awrade de wase wo nkwa ye nkwa a wodi afam yen kanye se wunyame wadum mu a ko tamfo no so ye mu no ko pese nyina ya yira na so so ehunu se wo so wo nyansa onim so wunyame wunyansa zumu ya beboa ye ni o awrade aboa ye ni o asore dem kra na nkefre ye nyina se bi ake nya nipa hinsi na hwe se de zumu yi otamfo no sese na wira wo ye de wase papa de waya amaye no ye hwehwehwehwa ye ntumi nka efise se nya wunyame na wo ya fa enke ye be ye den waka kire se ye nsro efise wo ka ye ho say the kosi we are say ye nti awrade de ho ato so na wo so obi a wode ne ho to so no o awrade unya no da ye de wase wo bo hyepa ye de wase awrade ye wo ye ma ye nyina ye ma eni ye nananom eni abusuan awrade hwe de ekoso se nyanyame no wa ya Israel kan ye de wase awrade wo enhweso pa ye de wase woniema ehinta ye ne a wunyame wonam wadom so na wuyi kire ye sadie ni titru anwumre basi ni pa bebre se mo nanso nyankopon wame a kire mu ama na ye simple ya ade a ya mfasika nkotua ya nya hwe nyame ye de wase papa wadum o ye de wase na waka chance wotamfo bia obedi a kire wo bose o wam nyina be wakiri no mo ahwe ase so otamfo no wodi asutumi eja ye de wase sa wo ba wiase wo be gira ya na mu na wu ma yen nai enam santi ye ni ayaba human so no wo ma yentumi abanyina wo se ye de ho to so a ye benya nkwa awrade da bi nkwa gie yi enu nti na awrade wadum ye nyina yetumi abehia ahuman so otumfo eja na nyame ye de wase kasi no asia enye yie hwemaba wa ne mrantie ti se ba bia bi ni nam na ye de waboa ye de ya no de aba eye de ye awrade de wo e de wase de wa ya maye otumfo ye de wase enim de ye nka ebisa aseda no edoso abroso wa ya amana abroso na ni nyina mu anidaso a wo de amaye se ye me yakumantutu covid yo de ye me yakumantutu ye de ye twaso ani anyimni if a trabia pi o wejafia wasiesie di ama uma awrade sa ni da soyi a wodi ama yani eya aseda o tumfo agenyame sanya wanke ye be ye dan otumfo ye koda ya nsori a nke ye ntumi mi so obi akweshin ye de wase wo nkwa a wodi ama ye na ni titire mu ye de wase nkwagye nhihya ene wiase ayira yi wamma wo mpanyimfo ne asofo aka etirabom na awrade ehia yeso
obi ameto anasesem di ankyerɛ yɛ wadum nti asɛm no a yɛka nyina de anim sɛ firi wo kwanwoma no Bible no nti awurade yɛsrɛw ma ne ntoa so saa na asɛm a yɛtie nyina firi wo nyame wasɛm mu that says the Lord ɛno nti ne yɛabɛhyia ha nam saa yɛ so awurade etumi adi wanam wachi ama kwan no a wasiesie di ama yɛ no yɛnsa bɛka ebisa wo ka sɛ wo kosiesie baabi no yɛnya na wo kosiesie ma yɛ nenim sɛ wo bɛgye yɛ yɛde wase wɔ wo bɔhyɛ yɛde wase wɔ wo dɔ yɛde wase wɔ nkonimdi a wadi ama yɛn ɛwɔ Yesu Kristo din mu amen
Amen.
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 Amen. The best night na Radia Nemuna in West Coast of Poyadamwasi. They towards the riverside. It was a mother have a couple. The merchant in Yaba. And pay ditch at this one. Ante a fee antobam. Onona of a bow amayen. And nay no, ye di kaino. The idea not to mean credible say answer several in fire bonnet. And until Mojadi share no I ready Yesu Christo Figu. Yatuntum awurade ne ada na se awie no ehia sɛ ɔma yɛn so yɛ ho san yɛn ehu so wagye yɛn atum wɔ mogya no mu nti sɛ nyame agɔ ama yɛba yɛn maame sɛ awurade ma yɛn na ɔnhohoro yɛ bɔne no ansa na yɛakɔkɔda wɔsɛ mommɛmmɔ mpaeɛ
yɛda wase nyame tumfoɔ Bible any one has to pa. Yet I was see bebree so I can yet I was say and say so. I heard and so a boy and who buying one more bonny bian kind now yabe share in May. Ready in May or Maya ba. Yes, so say me more. Yes, so fine from so in a chain. When it's subia a hint away a hint away ya dream ya kumamu, yes, so say ready. We are more bought nothing in our chain. Enyumre yaba yensa si yebekɔ yakɔ yensa si yebeka yakeka yensa si yebehwɛ Awurade yahwɛ yɛsrɛw egyina Yesu Kristo din mu srɛw sɛ Awurade hu yɛn mmɔbɔ nefa yɛn mfom so nyinaa kyɛ yɛn na hohoro yɛn ho ne tew yɛn ho tew yɛn akoma ho enyumre yi wɔ ma yaba o yɛsrɛw yɛn mmɔbɔ nefa yɛn bɔne nyinaa kyɛ yɛn na gye yɛn mpaebɔ a yɛde ba w'anim enyumre yi kwan so yɛsrɛ wɔ Awurade kwa yɛn bɔne kyɛ yɛn yɛn mmɔbɔ ka yɛn ho yɛsrɛ ebi sɛ ade ahodoɔ a yɛde bɛto w'anim deɛ nim sɛ wɔ Awurade wobɛyɛ ama yɛn yɛnsrɛ wo mpo wɔ Awurade wadom ne w'ahummɔborɔ dɔɔso ma yɛn nti wobɔ yɛn ho ban na woyɛ ne nyinaa ma yɛn yɛka ne yɛka ne sɛn aseda wura aseda ne a yɛyie nka wo din yɛda wase sɛ wode yɛn bɔne akyɛ yɛn yɛda wase sɛ woahwɛ yɛn bɔne enyumre yi woma yaba yesrew miyamabo yesrew tew yɛn ho yesrew dware yɛn na tew yɛn ho na yɛn nyɛ sukyema yɛda wase enyumre yi sɛ wotie yɛn enim sɛ bra yaba w'ani ne nyinaa bra si batie yɛn mpaebɔ a yɛde ba w'anim no wayɛ ebisade nyinaa yɛda wase sɛ wotie yɛn na yɛn ho ne hyira yɛn wadom ne ohumɔbɔ amen.
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 Amen. Yanom enche yebeko. So be ya ocha no pe betimi abampa ye yedru so no ye adom konkron na hwe egu. Anopa no yete se obofo miensa enkrasem no ehia se ekọ. Awie se